Today, we are welcoming Ann Zimmerman, Democrat, for our candidate conversation. She is a candidate for the Kansas Board of Education 7th District. We prepared questions in advance for Ann. Questions from voters in advance, including those made during the conversation, will have priority. Questions can be upvoted to raise the priority. To submit a question during this conversation, click on the Q&A button. If it does not show on the Zoom bottom bar, click on More with the three dots. It will open a new window with the Q&A button. All questions must be focused on issues, policies, and leadership. Personal attacks, assumptions, or accusatory language will not be accepted. Thoughtful, clear, and respectful questions will be considered. Also, voters may click on the React button to send emojis if they like a statement. Ann will begin with an up to 3-minute opening statement. Then there will be up to 3-minute response to each question, ending with an up to 3-minute closing statement. Let's get started and listen to what Ann has to share with us. Ann, go ahead with your opening statement, and I'll switch my... There we go. Okay. Go ahead, Ann.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. My name is Ann Zimmerman. I live in Salina. I am running for the Kansas State Board of Education, District 7. And that district goes from Abilene and Dickinson County west to Ness and Rush County. It goes south to the Oklahoma border, including Comanche County and Barber County, and has a little tiny piece of Wichita, North Wichita, and it has 17 counties. So it's a big district. I am currently in my third term with the Salina School Board. And in each of my terms, that means I've been in office. The terms are 4 years. So I've been there almost 11 years now. And in each of those elections, I won the most votes. And I will say that is not because everybody in Salina thinks the same. In fact, we have a fairly conservative community. And so I hope that people will look at my background and not just the D behind my name. I have a deep understanding of public schools after 11 years on the school board. Plus, I grew up in Salina. I went to Salina Public Schools. I graduated from Salina South. I went on to Kansas State University in Manhattan and got an elementary education degree. From there, I started my teaching career in inner city Kansas City, Kansas, and it was the hardest job I've ever had. Later, I went on to something easier. I went to Harvard and I got a law degree, and I came back to Kansas. For about a decade, I worked for Kansas Legal Services, working with low-income and elderly people and farmers. And for the last 20 years or so, I've been a mediator, working with people in conflict to help them find common ground. And I will use those skills at the state level whenever they're needed. The reason I'm running is because I have concerns about so many elected officials in Kansas who do not support public schools. And that does not reflect the Kansas that I know. Republicans, Democrats, they support our public schools. And I want that force at the state level so that there is not so much pushback against public schools. When I started this job as a District 7 representative, I won't go in taking control of anything. I'll start it like I've started all my jobs, look around and see how things work, see what can be done from the powers that the state board has, and to see what the most crucial issues are. I am just getting acquainted with the state board. I was not very well informed about it until I started looking at the board when I signed up to take this position as a candidate. I think my minutes are up, but
Yeah, I think so. Very good. Thank you. I got the timer started a little late, but that worked out just about right. Okay, let's go with the first question. Local control versus state leadership. Local school boards value making decisions for their communities, and I'm going to switch over to me when I'm reading that. Let me start over. Local school boards value making decisions for their communities. Where do you believe the state board should provide statewide direction, and where should local districts have greater flexibility?
let me start by saying that the state board's role is limited. The state board hires the state commissioner of education, and it then sets standards. It sets standards for schools to become accredited. It sets standards for teacher colleges, teacher education programs in the colleges. And it does not control the budget. It does not control the curriculum. Local school districts control the curriculum. And that's one thing, as a Salina School Board member, I've spent a lot of time on, is looking at our curriculum. That is an important local role, and it does not need to be done at the state level. We choose at the local level the curriculums that fit the standards set by the state board. Now, one concern I have about local control is that the legislature seems frequently to be stepping in these days to determine for the local schools what their rules should be, their rules, their curriculum, and how they're going to run their schools, when it's really the local school board's job to do that. The state board has to lobby the legislature to get adequate funding for the schools. And we believe that if the state legislature wants to step in where the role really belongs to the local district, they should just use their influence, not make laws that tell the local school districts what to do. But the Kansas State Board of Education sets standards, and that's its main role.
Okay, thank you. And I'll switch over to me for the question if I can get this working right. Okay. Student well-being. Beyond academics, schools help address issues such as attendance, student behavior, safety, and mental health. What role should public schools play in supporting students in these areas?
Yes, schools are inevitably involved in students' behavior and mental health because all those things affect the progress of schools at school, the progress of students in schools, and the behavior of students in schools. That is crucial to classroom management. I was happy to hear lately, just today, there was a study that came out that showed that Kansas students' mental health is improving, and they are doing less vaping, they're having fewer suicidal thoughts, and pretty good jumps in the last 4 years. So that is really good news. I know that during the pandemic, the schools loaded up on mental health support for students. And that made a big difference. When the kids were having trouble, they could send them to a counselor, and the counselor would talk to them, and that helped a lot. And when the COVID money dried up, the schools didn't want to lose those positions. So they took money from other places. Many of them rearranged their budgets just so they could keep those mental health professionals working with their students. And it looks like it's having a good effect. So I was happy to see that just today.
Okay, thank you. And question Academic standards and accountability. How should Kansas measure whether schools are succeeding, and what changes, if any, would you make to the current accountability system?
I'll start by saying that I admire the work of our former education commissioner, Randy Watson. He was willing to toss everything up in the air and rearrange school in new ways. He went all around the state asking leaders in communities from the north to the south to the west to the east what they wanted to see in high school graduates. And universally, what they didn't say was they need more math skills or they need more reading skills because the kids could already do that. The thing they needed was social skills, sometimes called soft skills, so that the kids, first of all, could control themselves and understand emotions, and they could work with other people. They could work in teams, and they could get along in a workplace. Those were the key requests from people around the state. But we, once they looked at all this stuff and decided to set new parameters, standards for the state, they ended up with 5 areas to evaluate kids on. The first was, of course, graduation rate, how many kids make it out. The second was post-secondary success. So all the school districts now have to monitor our students 2 years after graduation to see if they have a certificate from a trade school, or if they're in college working toward a degree, or if they're in the military. We have to monitor that. We also have to watch for kindergarten readiness, which is because so much brain growth goes on before kindergarten that if they start kindergarten behind, it's always hard to catch up. And so many schools now have preschools in their public schools. The next thing is an individual plan of study that each high school kid has to have to show that they've looked at the possibilities for careers and they know how to choose their courses based on that. And finally, social and emotional skills. Those are things we measure now. And those are excellent things. I think we should just keep doing that and keep reflecting that back to the school districts so they know where to improve.
Next question. Technology and artificial intelligence. Technology, including artificial intelligence, is changing education rapidly. How should Kansas schools use these tools to improve learning while protecting academic integrity and student privacy?
This issue is a hard one for me. I don't exactly know what to say, and I need to study it more. I know that the Kansas State Board did a blue ribbon study in the recent past on technology in schools and cell phones, and they didn't act on that as fast as the legislature wanted them to. And so the legislature stepped in and ordered bell to bell, no devices for students during the day. I think that's probably a good thing. It would have been better had it been done by the board and not by the legislature, but the board didn't do it quickly enough. AI is very, it's a touchy subject for me. I know that people say they can work faster and better using it. I also know that if you don't know grammar, you can still write things. And I think it's really important that our students learn to write on their own without AI telling them what to say. I find that the few times I've allowed AI to write for me, it doesn't sound like me. And I have to change a lot of things. So that's something I need to study a lot about. And I don't have too much more to say about it.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. Serving the public. Looking beyond individual issues, what guiding principles would shape your decisions on the State Board of Education? And how would voters know you are serving the interests of Kansas students rather than special interests or political pressures?
Okay. Um, in general, when I work in a group, I try to be a team member. I try to participate in the discussions and I listen carefully to the others who are participating in the discussions, whether they be other board members, KSDE, Department of Education staff, or the public if they are presenting to us. Then I take what I've heard and I add it to what I know, and I make decisions on that basis. And that's the way I always do things. I do not have any special interests funding me, and maybe somebody's going to step in, but I'll probably be the same self that I was before. I don't expect that what uh, I don't expect to be controlled by other special interests, and I think that that will be clear if you're listening to me and I'm having a conversation with you, or if I'm responding to things that people are saying on the board. Those are my guiding principles: is to listen and to consider and to act as wisely as I can based on all the things I've learned in my life.
Thank you. And well, there we go. And let's go to the next question. Student achievement. Kansas students have different strengths and challenges. What specific actions would you support to improve academic achievement while ensuring every student has the opportunity to succeed?
Yes, there have been some statistics recently that didn't look that great for our students, but I also have read of dropping scores across the country. And I think it just shows it's a hard time to be a kid, which makes it a hard time to be a teacher. Kids have all the changes of the culture going on around them. Some people would like to have our kids be just like the kids in the 1950s. At least those are white kids in the 1950s. The kids of color back then didn't have it so well. Um, we are not in the 1950s, and we have to learn to um, allow children to be children in the 2020s. Um, Students need to be loved and encouraged. They all need to feel like they belong in the school where they are. If they have special needs, they need to have those needs met. And we have recent rules about teaching teachers how to teach reading, the science of reading. All the teachers, all the new teachers across the state and the young early teachers are all being taught the science of reading. We also have rules about dyslexia. Kids that have dyslexia or other learning disorders, they are diagnosed early on with the hope that they catch up and keep up. If they start kindergarten behind, then we try to keep them moving forward in every possible way. And those things are already being done. We just need to encourage the teachers to keep doing them. One thing I will say is that it's harder to get teachers these days because the pay is so lousy. It's better than it has been sometime in the past, but for about 10 years, we weren't allowing much of any increase at all in the school budgets. And we are just catching up after lawsuits to enforce the need at the constitutional level to provide an adequate and equitable education for all our children. And so we're catching up and we need more money. We would need to improve our teacher salaries and we would have better opportunities for teachers.
Okay, thank you. And preparing students for the future. How should Kansas schools balance preparing students for college, technical careers, military service, and direct entry into the workplace?
Those That brings up the topic of career and tech education. which is an important part of the high school curriculum now, allowing students to take college courses while in high school so that they can help them get paid for. They won't have to spend so much for college. Let me see, which number of question is that?
That was number 2, I believe.
Oh, yeah, okay. So already we are doing that post-secondary success model, so we have to keep track of those students and how much they're ready for the world, not just ready to graduate, but to not sit in their basement of the parents and play video games, but to go into the workforce well educated. Over 70% of jobs now in Kansas, require more than a high school diploma. And so if we send kids out with just a high school diploma, they are not prepared for the world. I think by teaching these kids the social skills, the ability to work in teams, and to manage themselves, we help prepare them to work with people in the future, and that is going to be key to their success.
Okay. I'm going to jump to question 5. You addressed question 3 a little bit, but we can come back to that if we have time. School funding priorities. If additional education funding became available, what would be your top priorities for investing those resources and why?
You hear in Topeka everyone saying, "Oh, we fully funded education. We fully funded education." Both parties are saying that, and they did meet the constitutional requirements set by the court to adequately fund education in the last couple of years. However, that is only general education, and that does not count special education, which is its own separate category. And they have not funded special education for at least 11 years. And that means that, special ed is not flexible. You find a kid with a special need, you do an evaluation, the child gets an IEP, an individual education plan, and there are things that plan requires. If it's a high needs child, there are extremely disabled children in our schools, and they may have to have a full-time aide with them, a paraprofessional with them, and that's very costly. And they may have to have special hearing, speech language pathology, and specialists working with them, and those are very expensive. And they're not optional. So school districts have to take money from their general budget and put it over in special ed because special is not funded. In our district in Salina, that's $6 million that we transfer every year from our general education budget to our special education budget. And imagine what more we could do in our general education classrooms if we had $6 million more dollars. That's huge. And so if more money were to be available, we would want it first to go to special ed. But we also need more money for our general education teachers. So there was a recent survey done by the Kansas Association of School Boards in the last few years, and it looked at all the states that did better than we do, than Kansas does in its schools. And the difference was they spent more money on their schools.
Okay, thank you. And going to question 9, listening to Kansans. The state board represents families across diverse communities. How would you gather input from parents, teachers, students, and local school boards when making statewide decisions?
Well, I think the key is publicity, publicizing and asking and sending out information. That at local district level, that can go far to getting reactions and responses from the school boards. Each school district has its own needs and its own experiences, and the more input we can get from them, the better. Parents and teachers, I think, for the most part, they need to be dealing with their own school district. Now, if they have a meta idea that is going to change the entire standards set by the state board. Those are things to communicate about with the state board member, and I'm happy to read. I'll read any email that anybody sends, and put that into my, into my pipe and smoke it, and make sure I keep it in mind when I am making decisions. Just to say, I don't smoke a pipe, so it'd be better to put it in words.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Looks like we got 3 minutes to go, or 3.5, whatever. But anyway, let's listen to your closing statement. Up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. The U.S. founding fathers believed that public education was essential for democracy. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, you can all find quotes from all of them about the value of public schools, because if people aren't educated in what it takes to be a democracy, then democracy is going to fail. I am most concerned about the misinformation that's been put out into the public sphere about public schools, teachers, administrators. Public school teachers are working harder than anyone to make sure that students learn. When the legislature has heard of problems in the schools, they say insulting things about schools, public schools, and sometimes they move funding away from there. When the truth is, the teachers knew the problems long before the legislature did, and they've been out there working with their meager salaries and their limited time, and they are trying to solve those problems. And we need to support our public school teachers, our public school staff, and that will support our students. We need Kansas kids to have the best education possible, whether they are special needs kids, whether they are gifted kids. They need to be able to reach their highest standard possible. And that's what I want by serving on the Kansas State Board of Education, District 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. We sure appreciate you taking the time to address these questions, and so we can learn from you and what you have to offer Kansas through the Kansas Board of Education. So thank you very much for your time, and appreciate the two participants that we had here too listening in on it. This is being recorded. We will have it on our YouTube channel and for other people to see, and we'll take it from there. And with that, I'm going to stop the transcript and close out. Thank you again, Ann.
Thank you, and thanks for the strength through diversity.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.